"I'm going for Jill," he said. "I'll wait for her at the bus stop." "What's the matter?" asked his wife. You've gone quite white." "Keep Johnny inside," he said. "Keep the doors shut. Light up now and draw the curtains." "It's only just gone 3," she said. "Never mind. Do what I tell you." He looked inside the tool shed outside the back door. Nothing there of much use. A spade was too heavy and a fork no good. He took the hoe. It was the only possible tool, and light enough to carry. He started walking up the lane to the bus stop, and now and again glanced back over his shoulder. The gulls had risen higher now. Their circles were broader, wider, and they were spreading out in a huge formation across the sky. He hurried on. Although he knew the bus would not come to the top of the hill before 4 o'clock, he had to hurry. He passed no one on the way. He was glad of this. No time to stop and chatter. At the top of the hill he waited. He was much too soon. There was half an hour still to go. The east wind came whipping across the fields from the higher ground. He stamped his feet and blew upon his hands. In the distance he could see the clay hills, white and clean, against the heavy pallor of the sky. Something black rose from behind them, like a smudge at first, then widening, becoming deeper, and the smudge became a cloud, and the cloud divided again into 5 other clouds, spreading north and east and south and west. They were not clouds at all. They were birds. He watched them travel across the sky, and as one section passed overhead within 200 or 300 feet of him, he knew from their speed they were bound inland, up country. They had no business with people here on the peninsula. They were rooks, crows, jackdaws, magpies, jays, all the birds that usually prey upon the smaller species, but this afternoon they were bound on some other mission. "They've been given the towns," thought Nat. "They know what they have to do. We don't matter so much here. The gulls will serve for us. The others go to the towns." He went to the call box, stepped inside and lifted the receiver. The exchange would do. They would pass the message on. "I'm speaking from the highway," he said, "by the bus stop. I want to report large formations of birds traveling up country. The gulls are also forming in the bay." "All right," answered the voice, laconic, weary. "You'll be sure to pass the message on to the proper quarter?" "Yes, yes." Impatient now, fed up, the buzzing note resumed. "She's another," thought Nat. "She doesn't care. Maybe she had to answer calls all day. She hopes to go to the pictures tonight. She'll squeeze some fellow's hand and point up at the sky and say, 'Look at all them birds.' She doesn't care." The bus came lumbering up the hill. Jill climbed out and 3 or 4 other children. The bus went on towards the town. "What's the hoe for, Dad?" They crowded around him, laughing and pointing. "I just brought it along," he said. "Come on, let's go home. It's cold. No hanging about. Here you, I'll watch you across the fields. See how fast you can run." He was speaking to Jill's companions, who came from different families living in the council houses. A short cut would take them to the cottages. "We want to play a bit in the lane," said one of them. "No, you don't. You go off home or I'll tell your mammy." They whispered to one another, round-eyed, and then scuttled off across the fields. Jill stared at her father, her mouth sullen. "We always play in the lane," she said. "Not tonight you don't," he said. "Come on now, no dawdling." He could see the gulls now, circling the fields, coming in toward the land. Still silent. Still no sound. "Look, Dad. Look over there. Look at all the gulls." "Yes, hurry now." Where are they flying to? Where are they going?" "Up country, I dare say, where it's warmer." He seized her hand and dragged her after him along the lane. "Don't go so fast. I can't keep up." The gulls were copying the rocks and crows. They were spreading out in formation across the sky. They headed in bands of thousands to the 4 compass points. "Dad, what is it? What are the gulls doing?" They were not intent upon their flight as the crows and the jackdaws had been. They still circled overhead, but nor did they fly so high. It was as though they waited upon some signal, as though some decision had yet to be given. The order was not clear. "Do you want me to carry you, Jill? Here, come pick-a-back." This way he might put on speed, but he was wrong. Jill was heavy. She kept slipping, and was crying too. His sense of urgency, of fear, had communicated itself to the child. "I wish the gulls would go away. I don't like them. They're coming closer to the lane." He put her down again. He started running, swinging Jill after him. As they went past the farm, turning, he saw the farmer backing his car out of the garage. Nat called to him. "Can you give us a lift?" he said. "What's that?" Mr. Trigg turned in the driver's seat and stared at them, and then a smile came to his cheerful, rubicund face. "It looks as though we're in for some fun," he said. "Have you seen the gulls? Jim and I are going to take a crack at them. Everybody's gone bird crazy. Talking of nothing else, I hear you were troubled in the night. Want a gun?" Nat shook his head. The small car was packed. There was just room for Jill if she crouched on top of the petrol tins on the back seat. "I don't want a gun," said Nat, "but I'd be obliged if you'd run Jill home. She's scared of the birds." He spoke briefly. He didn't want to talk in front of Jill. "Okay," said the farmer. "I'll take her home. Why don't you stop behind and join the shooting match? We'll make the feathers fly." Jill climbed in, and turning the car, the driver sped up the lane. Nat followed after. Trigg must be crazy. What use was a gun against a sky of birds? Now, Nat was not responsible for Jill. He had time to look about him. The birds were circling still above the fields, mostly herring gull, but the black-backed gull amongst them. Usually they kept apart. Now they were united. Some bond had brought them together. It was the black-backed gull that attacked the smaller birds, and even newborn lambs, so he'd heard. He'd never seen it done, but he remembered this now, though, looking above him in the sky. They were coming in toward the farm. They were circling lower in the sky, and the black-backed gulls were to the front. The black-backed gulls were leading. The farm, then, was their target. They were making for the farm. Nat increased his pace toward his own cottage. He saw the farmer's car turn and come back along the lane. It drew up beside him with a jerk. "The kid has run inside," said the farmer. "Your wife was watching for her." "Well, what do you make of it? They're saying in town the Russians have done it. The Russians have poisoned the birds." "How could they do that?" asked Nat. "Don't ask me. You know how stories get around. Will you join my shooting match?" "No, I'll get along home. The wife will be worried else." "My missus says if you could eat gull, there'd be some sense in it," said Trigg. "We'd have roast gull, baked gull, and pickled 'em in the barn. You wait until I let off a few barrels into the brutes. That'll scare 'em." "Have you boarded your windows?" asked Nat. "No, a lot of nonsense. They like to scare you on the wireless. I've had more to do today than to go around boarding up my windows." "I'd board them now if I were you." "Garn, you're gone windy. Like to come to our place to sleep?" "No, thanks all the same." "All right, see you in the morning. Give you a gull breakfast." The farmer grinned and turned his car to the farm entrance. Nat hurried on, past the little wood, past the old barn, and then across the stile to the remaining field. As he jumped the stile, he heard the whir of wings. A black-backed gull dived down at him from the sky, missed, and swerved in flight, and then rose to dive again. In a moment it was joined by others. 6, 7, a dozen black-backed and herring mixed. Nat dropped his hoe. The hoe was useless. Covering his head with his arms, he ran toward the cottage. They kept coming at him from the air, silent save for the beating wings, the terrible, fluttering wings. He could feel the blood on his hands, his wrists, his neck. Each stab of a swooping beak tore his flesh. If only he could keep them from his eyes. Nothing else mattered. He must keep them from his eyes. They had not learned yet how to cling to his shoulder, or how to rip clothing, how to dive in mass upon his head, upon the body. But with each dive, with each attack, they became bolder, and they had no thought for themselves. When they dived low and missed, they crashed, bruised and broken on the ground. As Nat ran, he stumbled, kicked their spent bodies in front of him. He found the door. He hammered upon it with his bleeding hands. Because of the boarded windows, no light shone. Everything was dark. "Let me in," he shouted. "It's Nat. Let me in." He shouted loud to make himself heard above the whir of the gull's wings. Then he saw the gannet, poised for the dive, above him in the sky. The gulls circled, retired, soared one after another against the wind. Only the gannet remained. One single gannet above him in the sky. The wings folded suddenly to its body. It dropped like a stone. Nat screamed, and the door opened. He stumbled across the threshold, and his wife threw her weight against the door. They heard the thud of the gannet as it fell. His wife dressed his wounds. They were not deep. The backs of his hands had suffered most, and his wrists. He had not worn a cap. They would have reached his head, or had he not worn a cap, they would have reached his head. As to the gannet could have split his skull. The children were crying, of course. They had seen the blood on their father's hands. "It's all right now," he told them. "I'm not hurt. Just a few scratches. You play with Johnny, Jill. Mammy will wash these cuts." He half shut the door to the scullery so that they could not see. His wife was ashen. She began running water from the sink. "I saw them overhead," she whispered. "They began collecting just as Jill and I ran in with Mr. Trigg. I shut the door fast, and it jammed. That's why I couldn't open it once you came." "Thank God they waited for me," he said. "Jill would have fallen at once. One bird alone would have done it." Furtively, so as not to alarm the children, they whispered together as she bandaged his hands and the back of his neck. "They're flying inland," he said. "Thousands of them. Rooks, crows, all the bigger birds. I saw them from the bus stop. They're making for the towns." "But what can they do, Nat?" "They'll attack. Go for everyone out in the streets. Then they'll try the windows, the chimneys." "Why don't the authorities do something? Why don't they get the army, get machine guns, anything?" "There's been no time. Nobody's prepared. We'll hear what they have to say on the 6 o'clock news." Nat went back into the kitchen, followed by his wife. Johnny was playing quietly on the floor. Only Jill looked anxious. "I can hear the birds," she said. "Listen, Dad." Nat listened. Muffled sounds came from the windows, from the doors. Wings brushing the surface, sliding, scraping, seeking a way of entry. The sound of many bodies pressed together, shuffling on the sills. Now and again came a thud, a crash, as some bird dived and fell. "Some of them will kill themselves that way," he thought, "but not enough. Never enough." "All right," he said aloud. "I've got boards over the windows, Jill. The birds can't get in." He went and examined all the windows. His work had been thorough. Every gap was closed. He would make extra certain, however. He found wedges, pieces of old tin, strips of wood and metal, and fastened them at the sides to reinforce the boards. His hammering helped to deafen the sound of the birds, the shuffling, the tapping, and, more ominous, he did not want his wife or the children to hear it, the splinter of cracked glass. "Turn on the wireless," he said. Let's have the wireless." This would drown the sound also. He went upstairs to the bedrooms and reinforced the windows there. Now he could hear the birds on the roof, the scraping of claws, sliding, jostling sound. He decided they must sleep in the kitchen, keep up the fire, bring down the mattresses and lay them out on the floor. He was afraid of the bedroom chimneys. The boards he had placed at the chimney bases might give way. In the kitchen they would be safe because of the fire. He would have to make a joke of it, pretend to the children they were playing at camp. If the worst happened and the birds forced an entry down the bedroom chimneys, it would be hours or days perhaps before they could break down the doors. The birds would be imprisoned in the bedrooms. They could do no harm there. Crowded together, they would stifle and die. He began to bring the mattresses downstairs. At the sight of them, his wife's eyes widened in apprehension. She thought the birds had already broken in upstairs. "All right," he said cheerfully. "We'll all sleep together in the kitchen tonight. More cozy here by the fire. Then we shan't be worried by all those silly old birds tapping the windows." He made the children help him rearrange the furniture, and he took the precaution of moving the dresser, with his wife's help, across the window. It fitted well. It was an added safeguard. The mattresses could now be laid, one beside the other, against the wall where the dresser stood. "We're safe enough now," he thought. "We're snug and tight, like an air raid shelter. We can hold out. It's just the food that worries me. Food and coal for the fire. We've enough for 2 or 3 days, not more. By that time—" And no use thinking ahead as far as that. And they'd been given directions on the wireless. People would be told what to do. And now, in the midst of many problems, he realized that it was dance music only coming over the air. Not children's hour, as it should have been. He glanced at the dial. Yes, they were on the home service, all right. Dance records. He switched to the light program. He knew the reason. The usual programs had been abandoned. This only happened at exceptional times, elections and such. He had tried to remember if it had happened in the war, during the heavy raids on London. But of course, the BBC was not stationed in London during the war. The The programs were broadcast from other temporary quarters. We're better off here, he thought. We're better off here in the kitchen with the windows and the doors boarded than they are up in the towns. Thank God we're not in the towns. At 6 o'clock the records ceased. The time signal was given. No matter if it scared the children, he must hear the news. There was a pause after the pips. Then the announcer spoke. His voice was solemn, grave, quite different from midday. "This is London," he said. "A national emergency was proclaimed at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Measures are being taken to safeguard the lives and property of the population, and it must be understood that these are not easy to effect immediately, owing to the unforeseen and unparalleled nature of the present crisis. Every householder must take precautions to his own building. Where several people live together, as in flats and apartments, they must unite to do the utmost they can to prevent entry. It is absolutely imperative that every individual stay indoors tonight, and that no one at all remain on the streets or roads or anywhere without doors. The birds in vast numbers are attacking anyone on sight, and have already begun an assault upon buildings. But these, with due care, should be impenetrable. The population is asked to remain calm and not to panic. Owing to the exceptional nature of the emergency, there will be no further transmission from any broadcasting station until 7 a.m. tomorrow." They played the national anthem. Nothing more happened. Nat switched off the set. He looked at his wife. She stared back at me. At him. "What's it mean?" said Jill. "What did the news say?" "There won't be any more programs tonight," said Nat. There's been a breakdown at the BBC. "Is it the birds?" asked Jill. "Have the birds done it?" "No," said Nat. "It's just that everyone's very busy. And then, of course, they have to get rid of the birds, messing up everything in the towns. Well, we can manage without the wireless for one evening." "I wish we had a gramophone," said Jill. "That would be better than nothing." She had her face turned to the dresser backed against the window. Try as they did to ignore it, they were all aware of the shuffling, stabbing, the persistent beating and sweeping of wings. "We'll have supper early," suggested Nat. "Something for a treat. Ask Mammy. Toasted cheese, eh? Something we all like?" He winked and nodded at his wife. He wanted the look of dread and apprehension to go from Jill's face. He helped with the supper, whistling, singing, making as much clatter as he could, and it seemed to him that the shuffling and the tapping were not so intense as they had been at first. Presently he went up to the bedrooms and listened. He had no longer heard the jostling for place upon the roof. "They've got reasoning powers," he thought. "They know it's hard to break in here. They'll try elsewhere. They won't waste their time with us." Supper passed without incident, and then, when they were clearing away, they heard a new sound, a droning, unfamiliar, a sound they all knew and understood. His wife looked at him, her face alight. "It's the planes," she said. "They're sending out planes after the birds. That's what I said they ought to do all along. That will get them. Isn't that gunfire? Can't you hear guns?" It might be gunfire out at sea. Nat could not tell. Big naval guns might have an effect upon the gulls out at sea, but the gulls were inland now. The guns couldn't shell the shore because of the population. "It's good, isn't it," said his wife, "to hear the planes?" And Jill, catching her enthusiasm, jumped up and down with Johnny. "The planes will get the birds. The planes will shoot them." But just then they heard a crash about 2 miles distant, followed by a second and then a third. The droning became more distant, passed away out to sea. "What was that?" asked his wife. "Were they dropping bombs on the birds?" "I don't know," answered Nat. "I don't think so." He didn't want to tell her that the sound they had heard was the crashing of aircraft. It was, he had no doubt, a venture on the part of the authorities to send out reconnaissance forces. But they might have known the venture was suicidal. What could aircraft do against birds that flung themselves to death against propeller and fuselage, but to hurtle to the ground themselves? This was being tried now, he supposed, over the whole country, and at a cost. Someone high up had lost his head. "Where have the planes gone, Dad?" asked Jill. "Back to base," he said. "Come on now, time to tuck down for bed." It kept his wife occupied undressing the children before the fire, seeing to the bedding, one thing and another, while he went round the cottage again, making sure that nothing had worked loose. There was no further drone of aircraft, and the naval guns had ceased. Waste of life and effort, Nat said to himself. We can't destroy enough of them that way. Costs too heavy. There's always gas. Maybe they'll try spraying with gas, mustard gas. We'll be warned first, of course, if they do. There's one thing, the best brains in the country will be on it tonight. Somehow the thought reassured him. He had a picture of scientists, naturalists, technicians, and all those chaps they called the backroom boys, summoned to a council. They'd be working on the problem now. This was not a job for the government, for the chiefs of staff. They would merely carry out the orders of the scientists. They'll have to be ruthless, he thought. Where there's trouble, worse, they'll have to risk more lives if they use gas. All the livestock, too, and the soil all contaminated. As long as everyone doesn't panic, that's the trouble. People panicking, losing their heads. The BBC was right to warn us of that. Upstairs in the bedrooms all was quiet. No further scraping and stabbing at the windows. A full lull in battle. Forces regrouping. Wasn't that what they called it in the old wartime bulletins? The wind hadn't dropped, though. He could still hear it roaring in the chimneys, and the sea breaking down on the shore. And then he remembered the tide. The tide would be on the turn. Maybe the lull in battle was because of the tide. There was some law the birds obeyed, and it was all to do with the east wind and the tide. He glanced at his watch. Nearly 8 o'clock. It must have gone high water an hour ago. That explained the lull. The birds attacked with the flood tide. It might not work that way inland, up country, but it seemed as if it was so this way on the coast. He reckoned the time limit in his head. They had 6 hours to go without an attack. When the tide turned again around at 1:20 in the morning, the birds would come back. There were 2 things he could do. The first, to rest with his wife and children, and all of them snatch what sleep they could until the small hours. The second, to go out and see how they were faring at the farm, see if the telephone was still working there so that they might get news up on the exchange. He called softly to his wife, who had just settled the children. She came halfway up the stairs, and he whispered to her. "You're not to go," she said at once. "You're not to go and leave me alone with the children. I can't stand it." Her voice rose hysterically. He hushed her, calmed her. "All right," he said, "all right. I'll wait till morning. And we'll get the wireless bulletin then, too, at 7. But in the morning, when the tide ebbs again, I'll try for the farm. And they may let us have bread and potatoes and milk, too." His mind was busy again, planning against emergency. They would not have milked, of course, this evening. The cows would be standing by the gate, waiting in the yard, with the household inside, battened behind the boards, as they were here at the cottage. That is, if they had time to take precautions. He thought of the farmer, Trigg, smiling at him from the car. There would have been no shooting party. Not tonight. The children were asleep. His wife, still clothed, was sitting on her mattress. She watched him, her eyes nervous. "What are you going to do?" she whispered. He shook his head in silence. Softly, stealthily, he opened the back door and looked outside. It was pitch dark. The wind was blowing harder than ever, coming in steady gusts, icy from the sea. He kicked at the step outside the door. It was heaped with birds. There were dead birds everywhere. Under the windows, against the walls. These were the suicides, the divers, the ones with broken necks. Wherever he looked, he saw dead birds, no trace of the living. The living had flown seaward with the turn of the tide. The gulls would be riding the seas now, as they had done in the forenoon. In the far distance on the hill, where the tractor had been 2 days before, something was burning. One of the aircraft that had crashed. The fire, fanned by the wind, had set light to a stack. He looked at the bodies of the birds, and had a notion that if he heaped them, one upon the other, on the window sills, they would make added protection for the next attack. Not much, perhaps, but something. The bodies would have to be clawed at, pecked, and dragged aside before the living birds could gain purchase on the sills and attack the panes. He set to work in the darkness. It was queer. He hated touching them. Their bodies were still warm and bloody. Their feathers matted, or the blood matted their feathers. He felt his stomach turn, but he went on with his work. He noticed grimly that every window pane was shattered. Only the boards had kept the birds from breaking in. He stuffed the cracked panes with the bleeding bodies of the birds. When he had finished, he went back into the cottage. He barricaded the kitchen door, made it doubly secure. He took off his bandages, sticky with the bird's blood, not with his own cuts, and put on a fresh bandage. His wife made him cocoa, and he drank it thirstily. He was very tired. "All right," he said, smiling. "Don't worry. We'll get through." He lay down on his mattress and closed his eyes. He slept at once. He dreamt uneasily, because through his dreams there ran a thread of something forgotten, some piece of work neglected that he should have done, some precaution that he had known well but had not taken, and he couldn't put a name to it in his dreams. It was connected in some way with the burning aircraft and the stack upon the hill. He went on sleeping, though. He did not awake. It was his wife shaking his shoulder that awoke him finally. "They've begun," she sobbed. "They've started this last hour. I can't listen to it any longer. There's something smelling bad, too, something burning." Then he remembered. He'd forgotten to make up the fire. It was smoldering, nearly out. He got up swiftly and lit the lamp. The hammering had started at the windows and the doors, but it was not that he minded now. It was the smell of singed feathers. The smell filled the kitchen, and he knew at once what it was. The birds were coming down the chimney, squeezing their way into the kitchen range. He got sticks and papers and put them on the embers, and then reached for the can of paraffin. "Stand back," he shouted to his wife. "We've got to risk this." He threw the paraffin onto the fire. The flame roared up the pipe, and down the fire fell the scorched, blackened bodies of the birds. The children woke, crying. "What is it?" said Joe. "What happened?" Nat had no time to answer. He was raking the bodies from the chimney, clawing them out and onto the floor. The flames still roared, and the danger of the chimney catching fire was one he had to take. The flames would send away the living birds from the chimney top. The lower joint was the difficulty, though. This was choked with the smoldering, helpless bodies of the birds caught by the fire. He scarcely heeded the attack on the windows and the door. Let them beat their wings and break their beaks and lose their lives in an attempt to force entry into his home. They would not break in. He thanked God he had one of the old cottages with small windows and stout walls, not like the new council homes. Heaven help them up the lane. In the new council homes. "Stop crying," he called to the children. "There's nothing to be afraid of. Stop crying." He went on raking at the burning, smoldering bodies as they fell into the fire. "This'll fetch them," he said to himself. "The draft and the flames together. We're all right as long as the chimney doesn't catch. I had to be shot for this. It's all my fault. Last thing I should have made up the fire. I knew there was something." Amid the scratching and tearing at the window boards came the sudden, homely striking of the kitchen clock. 3 a.m. A little more than 4 hours yet to go. He could not be sure the exact time of high water. He reckoned it would not turn much before 7:30, 20 to 8. "Light up the Primus," he said to his wife. "Make us some tea and the kids some cocoa. No use sitting around doing nothing." That was the line. Keep her busy, and the children too. Move about to eat, drink, and always best be on the go. He waited by the range. The flames were dying, but no more blackened bodies fell from the chimney. He thrust his poker up as far as he could go and found nothing. It was clear. The chimney was clear. He wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Come on now, Jill," he said. "Bring me some more sticks. We'll have a good fire going directly." She wouldn't come near him, though. She was staring at the heaped, singed bodies of the birds. "Never mind them," he said. "We'll put those in the passage when I've got the fire steady." The danger of the chimney was over. It could not happen again, not if the fire was kept burning day and night. "I'll have to get more fuel from the farm tomorrow," he thought. "This will never last. I'll manage, though. I can do all that with the ebb tide. It can be worked, fetching what we need when the tide's turned. We've just got to adapt ourselves, that's all."